Well, I did it. I finished The Flowers of Evil, or Aku no Hana if you're Weebanese. And I think I left off on Volume 6, where Kasuga and Nakamura were about to commit dual suicide in front of the whole town at their summer festival. So I think I also said that Nakamura like throws Kasuga from the platform, and then she says that she's gonna go solo, which to me makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And before I get into that, I have to say that the final chapter of this manga validated exactly what I thought very early on. So, I don't think I said this, but something I thought very early on was that the way Nakamura talks to people, it's as if she's seen them in a similar way to how the main character from Sai no Uta saw the world. Now, if you don't know what Sai no Uta is, it's a manga where a main character gets in a car accident. Some doctor does some experimental surgery to fix his brain, and then when he wakes up, he sees humans as horrific blob monsters where like their organs are inside out, and he sees the world like everything is just disgusting. Everything smells horrible, everything has a horrible taste, like everything is basically everything that's normal looks fucked up, and everything that's fucked up to him looks normal. Like everything gets inversed basically. So, in The Flowers of Evil, Nakamura, the way she talks to other characters, calling them shitbugs and just saying like, "Oh, come with me, empty man," like it sounds like she's seen these things. Like these aren't just like funny mimetic ways of talking to make her a unique, manic pixie dream girl. Like she has something wrong in her brain that is leading her to believe that this is the way that she reacts to the world is born out of like a truth that she can see that we just are not privy to. And that is exactly shown to be true in the final chapter of the manga. So yes, I did it. I figured it out. Not that it took much to figure out. I mean, Nakamura clearly has some degree of like a major, incredibly chronic schizophrenia with incredibly strong psychotic features, and also seems to be depressed because of it. So, moving on into volume 9, or no, in volume 7, basically there's like a hard reset. Takiwa, Taika. What the fuck do they call him in this? His name is like Taika? I don't remember Kasuga's name, his like actual name, because Kasuga's his family name, but whatever. Kasuga's in high school. I think he's in year 2. I'm not sure, but there's a time skip, and he's basically just depressed. There's some friends, but they don't really like, he's kind of like the weirdo in the group. Like if he stopped showing up, they wouldn't really mind. And one day there's some girls that are like, "Hey, we want to go to karaoke, but there's only a discount if you have 7 people, and we're going to take you losers." So they bring along these losers, and then Kasuga's like, "Oh no, I won't go. No, thank you." And then he kind of like changes his mind. He's like, "Oh, actually, I'll go," but he doesn't sing anything, and he's like pretty nervous and awkward. And he just kind of sits there, and then he leaves. And then one of the girls that was there was Tokiwa, and she is pretty tall. This is something that the manga does over time, is that it like, maybe it's because there's another time skip, like maybe Kasuga gets taller, but she's like, when she's first introduced, she's way taller than Kasuga. So they kind of like shorten her. Like the heights are not well managed in the manga, because later on Kasuga goes back home and he runs into 2 like cousins or something, and like he's like a full head shorter than them. Like he's a very short guy. And then so like in that comparison, like Tokyo should be like real fucking tall, but or like I guess the same height as those guys. But instead, she's like just, I don't know, they're like the same height by the end of the manga. So that was kind of weird. I like the idea that like she was like a tall person. I don't know. It's usually the anime girls are like always like a little bit shorter, and then, they're like, buka buka senpai, oh my god, like I don't know. She just had some unique features to her that made her different than the characters previous in his life, and I thought that was interesting. Unfortunately, they kind of go the way of the I don't even know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but whatever. Anyway, he runs into Tokyo in a bookstore, and she's looking at the Flowers of Evil, and then they get chatting, and then she like is I'll lend you a book, then you could start reading because you like books, and then they're doing that. They're going this back and forth, every day. He like reads a book that she lends him, and he gets like re-inspired, and he has like the crazy eyes that he had when like Nakamura was telling him to do weird shit. He's got the crazy eyes. And then one day she's like, oh, come over to my house. I don't know. She just like invites him over to her house while her family's there. And then her brother's like, oh, you're the first guy that she's invited over or something. Go sniff her asshole for me or whatever. And then they go upstairs and she's like, here's all my books. She throws up in this like curtain. There's all these books on the wall. Like she likes to read. Like that's, the reason she like talks to him is because like nobody else knows that she likes to read. They just kind of view her as this like tall, pretty girl, but she, she likes to read. That's her secret. In Japan, reading is you're basically like a Jew in the Holocaust. The way these characters act, like reading is, oh man, don't do it. Don't get caught saying you like to read. So what ends up happening is Kasuga sees a notebook that says plots, and he puts his hand, he like wants to touch the notebook, and then she like realizes what he sees, and she starts closing the curtain, and then their hands touch, and it's not even like a romantic thing. Like he's like wants to read like the notebook, and he's like, oh, are you writing something? And she's like, no, they're just ideas. I don't want anyone to read. I'm too embarrassed. And so then right after that, dun dun dun, her boyfriend shows up. Yeah, she's got a boyfriend. So the main character, but he doesn't even really seem like he cares about that. He's just interested in reading the books, like whatever. He's not looking for a girlfriend. There's 2 points. One of them is about to come up where other characters say to Kasuga, oh, are you a virgin? Like, and it just stings, because Kasuga, he's not a virgin, but definitely not a virgin in the way that like anybody would actually like want to be not a virgin. So Tokiwa's boyfriend shows up, and he's like he's this guy who like he's clearly jealous, but he tries to play it cool and tries to like appear to be friends or want to try to be friends with Kasuga. And part of it's like Kasuga's like so quiet that like, oh, this guy, he couldn't, threaten our relationship because he's such a beta, right? So then they go to like some hangout fucking cook shed. I'm shitting you not. They go to an actual cook shed, and like there's just a bunch of like other high school students from like Koji's class. I think that's the name of the boyfriend. And they're hanging out, and then Koji gets more and more like douchey, and then Tokiwa's like, oh, you're a dumb asshole, goodbye. And then I think Koji says like, oh, why'd you show up here, dumbass, to Kasuga. And it's like, dude, you're like, I don't know, you invited him, are you retarded? So then it seems like Tokiwa's relationship with Koji is going to end. And then during that, I think also Kasuga had inspired Tokiwa to start writing her novel. And Kasuga happens to run into Seiki, not Nanako, and you're like, what the fuck? I can't believe she's here. And she's looking, Seiki is very much like the kind of Aiko of this story. Somebody who's like kind of evil? I don't know. Aiko actually didn't really end up being evil, but there's a lot of similarities between this manga and Goodnight Pun Pun. And I'm pretty sure Goodnight Pun Pun came out later. So like, I gotta actually look this up right now. Goodnight Pun Pun wiki. Like, when did this come out? Did they come out at the same time? I don't want the fucking fandom. I want the goddamn wiki. It came out in 2007. This came out before Flowers of Evil. Flowers of Evil started coming out in 2010, so never mind. Maybe this one. But they finished at the same time, which is interesting. Goodnight Pun Pun started like 3 years earlier, but they finished at the same time. Kind of interesting how the trajectory seems to kind of go in the same way. But maybe that's just a style of Japanese writing where you do a time skip and then you have the characters come back together and they're all different. And oh my god, my phone's attacking me. Anyway, some stupid shit happens. Nobody cares about. Like Kasuga meets up with Seiki, and you just think like this is gonna be weird because Seiki's fucking crazy. Like Seiki's probably the craziest person. Like I know Nakamura is like actually has mental illness, but Seiki for a normal person is actually fucking crazy. Like she just is doing some weird shit. So she meets up with Nakamura, and then she sends him this like nice text. Is like, oh hey, or she meets up with Kasuga. She's like, oh hey, it was nice seeing you. Do you want to meet up? Like it just sounds like a really nice text. It almost comes off as like emotionally manipulative because it's so nice. And then Kasuga meets up with her, and then she's like, she just starts asking him like hard hitting questions, like, oh, have you seen Nakamura? Like, why haven't you seen her? Like, if she just asking him all these questions, and then she just tells him like, oh, you're like, Tokiwa is just like a stand-in for Nakamura, because like Tokiwa looks exactly like Nakamura except taller and like not crazy. Like she looks really similar, and then she just starts saying that like, oh, you're running away from everything, like whatever, and I think they even hold hands at one point, but Seiki's just like really brutal. And then she leaves and she pays for the bill. And then she tells her boyfriend at the end of that volume that there's like a really hastily drawn thing that like she tells her boyfriend that she was like looking at a cram school. So she lies to him, but she never shows up in the manga again. Like that's it. So it's kind of strange. But anyway, Kasuga and Tokiwa have a conversation on the roof, and like Tokiwa clearly takes their relationship pretty seriously, and she's like, yo, winter break's coming up or like whatever, like, oh, I wanna go somewhere with you, like I wanna go see your like hometown, and like in Japan that's like a thing you can do, like you can get on a train and go anywhere in Japan, like that's so fucking cool. God, I wish like in America you could do that, right? Like that would be so cool to travel. Like it's so easy to travel by train, because you just like you put your luggage up ahead, or you can keep it on. Like it's so much easier to travel by train, and planes fucking suck. And so she wants to go on a train to go to his hometown, but they can't do that. So what ends up like he's just like, no, we don't need to go there. Like no, and it's a little awkward. He's not really given a good reason. And then she's like, oh, if something happened back then, like didn't, like you can tell me, like. And then he's like, oh no, ha ha ha, no, he. And then he like blurts out like, oh, I'll never betray you, but yeah. And then she's like, okay, whatever, bye. And which is kind of funny because like earlier on, like she asked like, oh, like what happened like back in your hometown, like something happened, right? And then he doesn't say anything. And then one night later on, he like, well, first he goes back with his parents to his hometown at the same time because his grandfather is dying. So he goes without her. He goes back to the town, and then some people like tell him that like, oh, you're the reason he's dead. Everything's been really shitty here for us since you fucked everything up and you didn't apologize. And then he apologized to them, and then he runs into Nanako's friend, who I forget her name, but she was the one who was like doing the investigation with Nanako Seiki in the beginning, and she shows up, and then they meet up at like a diner, and she's pretty cool. She's honestly like, in the beginning she was just like she was a total bitch, but she's just like, oh, like everyone like left me, like like she had her own shit going on like back home, like Nakamura and Kasuga and Nanako, like they all left her, which is weird because like she didn't have any connection to Nakamura and Kasuga, but she was in this dynamic partially because of Nanako. And I think she might have really liked Nanako, maybe some kind of lesbianness, because I mean, she was really protective of like Nanako in the school in a weird kind of way, more than just like a friendship. It was a little strange. So they meet up, and then she's like, oh, like, have you seen Nakamura? Like, I can tell you where she is. Like, I'll write it down. Like, you can go to her. You can go see her. Like, as I know where she is right now. And like that phrasing, when it said like I know where she is right now, I had two thoughts: either she's dead or she's like in like an insane asylum or something. Like, I thought Nakamura was gonna be dead and he was gonna go to a gravestone, which I thought that would have been a fucking banger ending. That would have been fucking awesome. That like that would have been like a kind of good night pun pun ending where like, you know, you're trying to get this catharsis but it never comes, and then like when you finally have developed enough where you can like you can go back to that point in your life, you can you know, face that point in your life again, but the time has passed, the moment is gone, like you can't fucking face it because it's just, there's nothing to face, it's gone. Like, I thought she was going to be dead. Unfortunately she's not. I mean, it's nice, I guess the characters are alive, but I mean, characters are just a tool for telling a story. So for me, I would have liked it better if she had died, like presumably by suicide or something. I don't know how else she would die, really. You know, it's not like cops are gonna shoot her. They don't really have guns in Japan. So yeah, so he goes there and he comes back and he has the piece of paper, and then he's in Tokiwa's room, and Tokiwa's like, they're kind of sitting there, they're reading for a while. She's like writing her novel. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. Tokiwa was like calling Kasuga after the date that he had with Seiki. Well, not really a date, but like she was like calling him to like talk about her novel, but he didn't like pick up. And then Koji calls her, and then they get back together. But then Kasuga, like, it's like in the winter, he like goes home, but he doesn't feel like going home, and he just like kind of walks around, and he ends up like at the cafe that Tokiwa works at, and he's like, no, I love you, come with me, come on, I love you. And then like she's like, okay, sorry boss, I'm leaving. And then like she like quits her job, and that's it. Then she's like gonna date Kasuga now, and then they go walking around, and it's kind of cute. There's a lot of movement, like there's a lot of like locations and walking in the later half of the volumes. So like it's really easy to just breeze through the pages because there's just like, oh, like here's this fucking crosswalk, here's a building, like there's not any story to get. So it's really easy to breeze through a lot of the chapters. And then Kasuga like comes clean, and he says like all the fucked up shit that like happened back in his hometown, like, and we are shown that from this like 2-panel spread of this collage of like all the events. And like afterwards, as you can imagine, like Tokiwa's like pretty shook. Like, I mean, if he was honest, and like we don't even know how he told the story, but like it seems like he told the story in a way that was just like exactly what happened, which is kind of, one, you're finding out that the guy you're with is like probably still in love with this crazy girl, and two, was like raped and has like a humiliation fetish, probably, because he seems like he really got off on that kind of stuff when him and Nakamura were hanging out. So she's just like, oh, I need to be alone to think about this. And then he's like, no, I'm not going to leave. And then she's like, what do you want? Just come out and say it. And like the main character isn't thinking that way, but like she is probably thinking like, oh, like she wants me to heal him with love, I think. And that gets validated in a few panels, I promise you. Like that's like, they're like, oh, what do you want? Just come out and say it, Baka, you know. But he doesn't like want anything like that. Like he just wants her to help him kind of get over Nakamura. So he wants her to go with him to where Nakamura is, because I don't know, honestly, he probably would get up into new shenanigans if he didn't. If you did go alone. So, but then she runs away. Like it's like 9 o'clock or some shit, and her parents are gonna be home soon. So she like runs out of her own house, and then he follows her, and then he like holds on to her, and she's like, let me go, oh. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna let you go. And then she's like, okay, well, then kiss me or something. And then they kiss finally, even though they've been dating for a while. I think at that point it had been like a fucking year. Like it had been a while. Like there's like another time skip. And at that point, like he's a little taller, so I think that's when their heights are a little bit more even. And then we finally get it. God, it takes for fucking ever to get to this point where Kasuga, Tokiwa go to where Nakamura is. We find out what's on the note. Her mom runs a eatery, and they ask where it is. They go there. They see a girl. It's definitely Nakamura's mom. And then you're seeing images in the bag. Kasuga's looking, but Tokiwa's the one who spots her for sure. The girl comes through the door. It's Nakamura. She's not dead. She's got black hair though, which I think was, I don't know what color her hair was before. I guess it was red. Maybe she was just dyeing her hair red. I don't know, but her hair's black now, and it's like cut a little different. It definitely doesn't look like Seiki's hair. It looks kind of strange, but her hair is different. And I think that was to like maybe make them differentiated, because like Tokiwa looks like Nakamura. But like that doesn't really come up. Like Nakamura is just, she does not communicate in a normal kind of way. And she doesn't even like really say anything when she sees Kasuga. I don't even think she even looks at him. Like she just like hands them the food or whatever and walks away. And then she's like, oh, like it's me, Kasuga, you know, do you remember me or whatever? Not remember me, but like it's me. Like I came to see you. And then she just says like, oh, that's interesting or something or whatever. She doesn't even say anything. Like and the way she responds is very subdued. And then her mom comes over and she's like, oh, you're Kasuga. Like Nakamura's doing a lot better now. She's much more peaceful now. Like, I want you to leave. Don't come and talk to her. And then this is the part where it's a little unrealistic. Tokiwa like goes over and is like, please, Nakamura, like come and talk with us. Like I don't understand everything, or I don't have any right to, but like Kasuga like needs to talk with you or something, or I don't know, it's really weird. And then she's like, okay, go meet me down by the beach after work or something. So they go down by the beach, and then Nakamura shows up, and it's just weird. He tries to ask her like, why'd you push me? And like she doesn't really respond. Like, why did he like push her out of the suicide attempt so that she would like go solo? And like obviously the reason she pushed him is because like she was somebody that she brought into her world of like craziness, and she recognized that, and she pushed him because she didn't want him to kill himself for her. But like it was enough for her that he was willing to die with her, because like she clearly like liked him, and it seems pretty obvious. I mean, like on the mountain, like she was crying that he didn't pick her. My headcanon is that they had oral sex, because at one point she like, I don't know, like she puts her leg over his shoulder, and then she's like, you should thank me, don't you think, or something, like you should thank me. And it's just like, I don't know, that seems like a setup. And then the next panel we see, it's them outside the tent holding hands. Like, I don't know, how did he thank her? What did he use? Did he use his mouth to thank her, maybe? I don't know. Like, it seems like when you end a scene, like, you know, you're putting, as like a girl, you know, it would be like the equivalent of a guy if he was like posturing towards his like waist, and the girl was like on her knees, and he's like, oh, I think you should thank me. Like, I don't know. There's just one takeaway that I have from that scene, and it's that, like, you know, oral sex happened. So I think some intimacy happened. I mean, they definitely were like really flirty with each other, because like after Kasuga steals the underwear, she like spins. She does like a spin that, like, you know, makes her skirt go out before she sits in the chair. So like, you know, obviously that was an intentional thing. Like, that wasn't just her being crazy. Like, she was showing off, you know, like that was a thing that she was choosing to do. So yeah, I don't know. To me, it's not surprising that Nakamura like pushed him off because like she just wanted somebody that was like similar to her, but like obviously Kasuga wasn't actually like that perverted or crazy. Like his life would have been pretty normal without her. But he probably would not have actually started dating Seiki though. So like Nakamura really helped out. And then the conversation doesn't really go anywhere. Like he doesn't get any answers. And then he just like starts throwing Nakamura around. And it's like the end of Metal Gear Solid 4 or something where like the two characters are just fighting each other and it's like just so like this is all they know. So like he's just throwing her around and she doesn't really do anything. And then like she like punches him and then like Kasuga looks like he's having the time of his life. Like he loves getting beat up. Like he's into getting his shit beat up. So like she's like beating him up. And then like Tokiwa starts joining in and like they're in the water and like they're all just having a good time beating each other up and like I wanted like I don't know. I thought it was going to get weird. And then basically Nakamura is just like, oh, like, you know, don't come back, normal man. Like, and then that's it. That's the ending. Basically, we get some time skips. So the final half of the last volume is just like all time skips and like fucking montage. Nanako and that bitchy girl from before who told Kasuga where Nakamura was, they meet again and they're crying. Now this is after Nanako Seiki has like fucking 2 kids. Like it goes really far to the future. Kasuga and Tokiwa, they went to the same college. Tokiwa, her second book that she wrote, that one became like a young up and comer new novelist. Like that was like a published thing. They have kids. And they seemingly they have kids pretty young. Like they must have had them like shortly after graduating college. And in that time, we see Nakamura once again, and she goes to the train station and she takes a train to a city. And she goes to a city. So seemingly she goes to the city where Kasuga is. And that's interesting. Would Kasuga feel comfortable like with Nakamura being around given her violent tendencies if he has like a kid? Like would he ever have her baby? Probably not. No, never, right? Nakamura is fucking too crazy for that. I could see that being like a plot for like if you would re-up the series, it would be Nakamura kills Kasuga's child or kills Tokiwa and starts like trying to be a mom to the kid and like run that I could see that being like the plot of like some sequel or something fucking crazy. But no, what we end up seeing is we see like a brief kind of like symbolic thing of like Kasuga being normal, but then we see this dream where Kasuga is like feverishly writing and he's like this author and he has the crazy eyes that he has when he was like fucking with Nakamura way back then. And I guess that was to show that like how different his life could have been. Like he could have been a really good author, but he would have had to have been in such a crazy relationship that like, probably would have drove him mad. And then the final chapter is the first few chapters of the manga from Nakamura's perspective. So the way Nakamura saw reality is that everybody was like these like wispy flame creatures, and she could kind of not fully understand what everyone was saying. It was like interrupted. So it was exactly like Saya no Uta, which is really interesting. I wonder when Saya no Uta came out, because in Saya no Uta, the main character like also hears everything in a really fucked up way. Okay, so Saya no Uta came out in 2003. And in Saya no Uta, everybody looks like blob monsters, and the main character, he struggles to understand what they're saying because, like, their mouths make such weird guttural noises that it doesn't sound like Japanese. And for Nakamura, like, she can't fully understand what, like, the characters are saying. And she just sees them as, like, weird monster characters. And she understands this as, like, she, some kind of, like, I think for her, perversion makes you human. Because when she sees Kasuga being perverted, she can see his face. But before that, like, she just sees a blob monster, like a weird flame blob monster. And then she's sitting by the roadside, and it seems like she's about to get overtaken by, like, this flame. Like, oh no, it's, like, creeping up. And, like, so when she talks about, like, the weird feeling that she has that's, like, inside of her taking over, like, well, it's probably a combination of, like, you know, her misinterpreting her hormonal experience of, like, going into puberty for this other experience. But she also, like, seems like she has schizophrenia, which is kind of odd. I'm pretty sure schizophrenia is, like, incredibly rare in kids. I'm pretty sure, like, the age of onset is like a bit older, like usually after like puberty. It tends to be in the late teens to early 20s for men and late 20s to early 30s for women. Yeah, like, it's pretty surprising that, like, she has it. But there is, I don't know. Some people online said that, like, there was maybe some abuse there. And that would make sense because usually somebody is not, like, Nakamura seems like she has a lot of learned sexually abusive ways of behaving towards other people, specifically Kasuga, just, like, stripping him naked and, like, those things. Like, it seems unlikely that a middle school girl would be that way just, like, on her own. Like, she doesn't seem like she watches anything to get any of these ideas from anywhere, but her dad seems afraid of her. Like, her dad doesn't seem like he's abusing her. So it's hard to tell if there's, like, abuse that's motivating Nakamura's behavior. I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't want the story to go that way, because, like, then to me Nakamura just feels like Aiko, where she's just a character who's meant to, like, then she becomes a manic pixie dream girl to me, because the story should be about the character who has the most difficulty, the most trauma. And Nakamura's would be that character. Like, she has the most difficult time. But instead it's about this, like, loser guy who just gets to, like, basically get, like, a kinky Gia for a while, then gets to live a normal life. Like, that's fucking bullshit. Like, and that's the same way in Goodnight Pun Pun, where, like, you know, Kasuga or Pun Pun is just, like, a fucking loser gets to, like, he gets to, like, reinvent himself and get with girls, and, like, he can do all these things, but he feels empty for, like, no reason. Like, like, Pun Pun's trauma is self-inflicted. Like, his life was not that bad. Like, Pun Pun's life was not that fucking bad. Other than losing his mom at a young age. But, like, even then, like, he had his uncle who took care of him, and his uncle's girlfriend. Now, yeah, she did rape him, but, like, I mean, she genuinely cares. And, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, yeah, the rape's pretty bad. I will admit that. But, like, it wasn't violent at the very least. It was fucked up, though. So, I don't know. I don't like the idea that Nakamura has a lot of trauma that's outside of her mental illness. Just because then it seems like the story should have been more about her, because we just see so little of her, and we don't even see how she saw the world until the end. And I knew that. I got that, but yeah, I don't like that read on her situation. But I mean, that's the end. I guess most of the characters had a happy ending, and Nakamura is finding her way back to Kasuga, maybe. But, like, I mean, Kasuga's, like, like married to Tokiwa and they have like a kid. So like, what's that gonna mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know how you can foster a relationship with somebody like like a friendship with somebody who like you both were so kinkily intimate. Like, I don't know. It's just weird. I don't know. I don't know how you can be like friends now. Like, and I didn't have these thoughts or feelings when I finished the manga, but like I do have like I wish Nakamura was around more. I wish we saw more because it's just like Aiko's situation where she just shows up to like give the plot its send off. And that doesn't feel good for the character. Like for a character who's this impactful in the story, I feel like more of the story should have been dedicated to them. And I don't feel like there was like wasted pages or panels or anything. Like the one good thing about Aku no Hana is that it tells its story very efficiently. The paneling isn't very good. For example, there's one page where it has Kasuga and then it has Seiki's eye and then it has his eye and then it has Kasuga's mouth. And what ends up happening is that it looks like Kasuga is a cyclops who has like eyes that are going doot doot instead of like, horizontal eyes. And if you were if you were smarter at doing your paneling in your manga, you could have her eye on one side, his eye on the other, and like then like the mouth, and you could kind of have them like come together and be some kind of like, oh, it's like, it's both of their eyes, but like it comes together to make this face, and that kind of showed like their connectedness and like they're looking at each other, and it would just be interesting. But instead, the paneling makes it look like Kasuga's a cyclops in that page, which is just laughable. Oh man, I don't know. I do wish Nakamura was in the manga a bit more, just because I want to see how she recovered, because like her recovery is way more interesting than Kasuga's. Kasuga's is just like, oh, I'm a privileged boy, nobody cares about my virginity. I'm just gonna, my parents are taking care of me. Like Nakamura doesn't have parents. Like what's up with all these like suffering porn stories where like you have like the male character who like really doesn't have a difficult life, but then you have this girl character who comes in who has a way shittier life. Like the story should be about them. Like Goodnight Pun Pun from Aiko's perspective would be a way better manga, I think. And same thing, I don't think this would be a way better manga, but if we incorporated Nakamura's perspective, I think it would have been better. I just want that tiny bit of insight where like I just wanted one page maybe where after Kasuga and Tokiwa leave, Nakamura says she does something. Like maybe she had something of his, like maybe she had his gym clothes in her room at her mom's, or she had something, like she had something of his, or maybe she had the Flowers of Evil, because that was the book that she saw that he had, and that was how she first learned to identify which flame monster he was, because he had the Flowers of Evil book. Like I wanted there just to be something to kind of like show her feelings, because I don't understand the wrestling. To me, that should have like ended in like a threesome maybe. I don't know. That would have been cool. That was the other thing too, is I wanted Kasuga and Nakamura to have sex. I feel like Nakamura deserved to get the sex. I feel like she wanted to fuck. Maybe, I don't know. I just, considering what we see with Seiki, I feel like, like damn, Seiki got to get fucked by him. I mean, not really. They didn't really last long. They didn't even like, neither of them finished. But I feel like Nakamura and Kasuga should have banged before the suicide. I feel like that's something that you would do, and they don't do that. So that's my own. That's part of my disappointment with the series is should have been a little more kinkier considering what the stuff was about. But I guess it's a shonen manga. You can only do so much, and they did go pretty far. But yeah, it wasn't disappointing. But thinking back on it, Nakamura deserved more screen time. That's really true. Anyway, that's all I got to say. So I don't know. If you like Goodnight Pun Pun more than this, tell me I'm an idiot. Whatever.